What if you found yourself in a situation where someone was begging you to save their life? Imagine it's 3 a.m. and you're awakened by the scream of a woman in your building begging for her life. You try to help, but a locked iron door blocks you. You call the police again and again, hoping they'll step in. But hours pass, and no one arrives. They seemed more concerned about the caller's persistence, even interpreting their urgency as rudeness, than about the life of a woman voice fighting for her last breath. Tragically, this nightmare unfolded with no rescue in sight. This isn't just a what-if. It's exactly what happened to a young woman named Vera Pekala, a story that sparked outrage across Russia. Today, we're exploring Vera Pekala's tragic story, which reveals critical failures in Russia's emergency response system. Her death highlights systemic police negligence, domestic violence, and a justice system that let her down. In this video, we'll recount Vera's story, discuss why the police never arrived, and examine the aftermath that has spurred her family and the public to demand change. By the end, you'll see why her case is a crucial call for urgent reform and justice that remains unfulfilled. The life of Vera Pekala? Who was Vera? Beyond the tragic headlines, she was a lively, compassionate young woman with big dreams and a loving family. Born in 1997 in Kiselev, Russia, Vera Pekala was just 22, a vibrant soul with a heart set on making a difference. Known for her kindness and determination, she grew up close to her mother, Oksana, and her extended family. Although her parents, Oksana and Evgen, separated early on, both stayed actively involved in her life. Even after her father remarried, Vera shared warm bonds with her new family and especially cherished holidays with her half-siblings. Vera was passionate about singing and won several local competitions, but she chose to study economic security at a technical university to combat corruption and drive positive change. Family was everything to her, and she maintained a close relationship with her mother, Oksana, even after moving to university. Oksana described Vera as compassionate, resilient, and empathetic, qualities that shaped her relationships and aspirations. Like many young people, Vera sought love and companionship, leading her to a relationship with Vlad, a choice that would eventually place her on a dark path. A troubled love story with Vlad and deadly consequences. We've all heard the story, a girl thinks she can change a troubled man. For Vera, though, that belief led her into a deadly trap. In 2017, Vera met her old classmate, Vladislav Canis, or Vlad, at a house party, and they quickly began dating. Vlad had endured significant trauma. His mother abandoned him, and his father committed suicide in front of him after a crime, leaving him deeply affected. Known for his violent temper and heavy drinking, he had no job and a volatile personality. Concerned, Vera's parents urged her to end the relationship, fearing Vlad was taking advantage of her. However, Vera believed her love could help him heal. Initially, Vera appeared happy, sharing loving photos with Vlad on social media. However, by 2019, problems emerged. After moving into a flat in Kovo near her university, where her parents paid the rent, Vlad became a burden. He refused to work, neglected household responsibilities, and drank excessively. Her mother, Oksana, worried that Vlad was manipulating Vera, while friends suspected he was using her financially. As tensions grew, Vera stopped sharing their relationship online and began keeping it a secret, even from her family. As time passed, Vera's situation deteriorated. She decided to leave Vlad, moving to a dorm for a fresh start, but he refused to let go and stayed in her apartment. Unbeknownst to her parents, who continued to pay the rent, Vlad grew increasingly obsessive, blocking Vera from retrieving her belongings. Vlad's obsession escalated, and he later confided to his brother, Stanislav, "She'll either be with me or I'll kill her." His brother brushed it off as emotional venting. For weeks, Vera tried to set a time to retrieve her belongings, but Vlad kept dodging her calls and making excuses. On January 12, 2020, Vlad called Vera, offering to help her collect her things, and they arranged to meet the next day. Vera saw this as her chance to move on, but Vlad viewed it as his last opportunity to win her back. This desperation would soon escalate into horrific violence that would haunt everyone in Vera's apartment building forever. A cry for help on a cold night. In the early hours of January 14, 2020, around 3 a.m., the halls of a quiet apartment block echo with the sound of desperate cries of Vera, who was screaming for her life, pleading for someone, anyone, to save her. Her voice shatters the silence, and before long, a group of neighbors gathers outside her door, trying to help but held back by a locked iron door. Inside the apartment she once called home, Vera was trapped with her ex-boyfriend Vlad. Every scream and thud painted a horrifying picture of what was happening beyond the door. Roughly 15 neighbors stood helplessly in the hallway, chilled to the bone by the sounds of her suffering. One of the people outside the door was Vlad's own brother. Slatislav Vlad had spoken to him on the phone earlier that day, and something in the conversation unsettled Slatislav enough to rush to the apartment. They banged on the door, shouted for Vlad to stop, and threatened him with the consequences, but he ignored them as if their pleas didn't reach him at all. Neighbors repeatedly called the police, urgently pleading for help, but each call was met with indifference and frustrating delays. Around 6:30 a.m., just before dawn, Vlad's voice was heard softly saying, "Vera, forgive me. I love you very much." A dull thud followed, and Vera, who was near the door, fell silent. Vlad delivered a final fatal blow to the back of Vera's skull, inflicting devastating brain trauma. Yet, even after this, he wasn't done. He wrapped the iron cord around her lifeless body, strangling her further. The autopsy later revealed that Vera had suffered 3 separate fatal injuries, first through torture and stabbing, then the blow to her skull, and finally strangulation. It was also determined that the physical assault had begun approximately 6 hours before her death. A neighbor found a crowbar in a nearby parking lot and used it to pry open the door. Inside, they found a scene of horror, blood on the walls and ceiling, and Vera's lifeless body on the floor. In the bathroom, Vlad lay drunk, clutching a bloody knife. It was nearly 7 a.m. when a shaken neighbor made a final call to the police, who only arrived after Vera was already dead. The night of horror. To understand how things spiraled into that horrific night, let's rewind to the hours leading up to Vera's final pleas for help. On January 13, Vera arrived to collect her belongings. Vlad offered her alcohol, beer, and vodka, which she accepted, hoping it would keep things civil. But as night turned into early morning, his real intentions surfaced. He wanted her back. When she refused, his anger started to boil over. Sensing danger, Vera tried to discreetly alert her friend. During interrogation, Vlad claimed he offered to help Vera move her belongings on January 12, meeting her the next afternoon. He said they packed, drank, and talked until around 5:00 a.m. on January 14, alleging no conflict until he accused her of seeing someone else. Vlad claimed she slapped him, and he struck her only 4 times, also wrapping an iron cord around her neck to quiet her. In reality, Vlad brutally assaulted Vera for over 3.5 hours, hitting her over 100 times, binding her neck, breaking her nose and ribs, raping her, and covering her body with bruises, cuts, and lacerations. Desperate to escape, Vera reached the iron door multiple times, banging and screaming for help, but Vlad pulled her back each time, ignoring her pleas. Pathologists later confirmed that her injuries covered nearly every inch of her body. The neighbors desperately tried to break down the door and called the police repeatedly, but help never came. In one harrowing call, Vera's faint screams could be heard in the background. Realizing no one was coming, Vlad's violence intensified. For 3.5 hours, Vera fought, screamed, and pleaded as Vlad's assault continued. Her final cries echoed through the hallway. leaving those on the other side of that iron door haunted by the horror they couldn't prevent. The system fails Vera. Why did no one save her? This is where the story becomes even more tragic. Despite receiving at least 7 calls from Vera's neighbors, police responded casually. The officer on duty, Mikhail Boso, said only 1 car was available, and his replacement, Dmitry Sorosin, cited lack of fuel as an excuse. Footage showed operators dismissing urgent pleas. Later investigations revealed sufficient resources were available. In court, 3 operators were charged with neglect, given suspended sentences for a year and a half, and ordered to pay Vera's family a small fine of around £300 each, but they kept their jobs. You'd think Vera's killer would finally face justice, but in the end, it was the justice system itself that proved to be the greatest failure in her case. Vlad was eventually caught and confessed to the crime, offering twisted justifications. He claimed he only meant to silence her and didn't think his actions would kill her. In July 2022, he was sentenced to 17 years in prison, which felt like too little given the brutality of his crime. On July 28, 2022, Vlad was sentenced to 17 years in a strict regime colony and ordered to pay Vera's family about £30,000. However, in April 2023, after only a few months in prison, he was pardoned to serve on the front lines in the Russian army. After 6 months, he was free with his record cleared. For Vera's mother, Oksana, this was a gut-wrenching betrayal. She had lost her daughter, endured the injustice of a negligent police force, and now had to live with the fact that her daughter's killer was walking free. Justice failed Vera not once but multiple times. The public was outraged when this was revealed. The authorities' lack of response and cold indifference sparked a nationwide debate. Vera's tragic death became a symbol of the failures within Russia's emergency response system. If you're moved by Vera's story, share this video. Speak up about injustices, stay vigilant. By keeping her memory alive, we can honor Vera Pekala's legacy and push for a system that won't fail another person in their time of need. Thank you for watching, and remember, stay safe, stay aware, and let Vera's story remind us all of the importance of speaking out and pushing for change.